Hey folks, welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hope you're having a pretty good day wherever you are, or a good night. If it's the middle of night when you're listening to this, I hope wherever you are, I hope the night is going well. Or if you're going back to your house, I hope you have some delicious food that you want to eat, and you deserve it. Never forget that you deserve a little bit of self-care in the form of delicious food that you enjoy. That's something I think about a lot. Like, I didn't hear the phrase self-care until I think maybe the last 2 years, but my idea of that is that if I'm having a stressful day, I eat some food that I enjoy, and then my day is better. On the show today, comedian Sam Evans. Sam, I've known for a few years. He's one of the nicest guys I know in stand-up. Very funny guy, and we talked a little bit. We talked about his family life growing up. We get into some real like solid parental talk, some very solid comedy talk, and we talk a bit about a moment in Sam's career that didn't quite pan out the way he imagined it would, and how he came back and rebounded from that experience. And it's kind of encapsulates what the overall theme of what I try to do with this podcast is, in that life is this series of moments that are either awesome or disastrous, and sometimes both at the same time. And how you pull out of ideally you want to pull the awesome parts out of the disastrous parts, or at the very least you have a good story after the time you've had the time to heal from the after effects of the disaster. But it was a really good, honest chat that I haven't had with a lot of comics just out in the world. And when they come over to the apartment I share with my lovely girlfriend, I feel that I get a lot closer to the people I talk to, which you've heard podcasters who do this kind of interview show say before. But this was a really revelatory, great conversation I had with Sam, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. A couple quick housekeeping notes. If you guys enjoy the show, we are available on Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. You can also get go right to my Libsyn page. I personally really enjoy Libsyn. I've been using them for 2 years to host my show, and if you're looking to start a podcast, I personally think they're great. I'm not sponsored. I'm not paid to say that. I just have had a good experience with them. If you want to support me in any way, here's a couple of ways that would really help me. If you enjoy the show, tell a friend. Or if you enjoy the show, tell your favorite bands. Because if you listen to me talk in here about comedians and bands I like, you and I are probably on the same page. So I want to talk to them, and it would help me if you can let them know that you enjoy the show and it's worth checking out. So thank you guys for that. I'm, of course, on Twitter at Comic Will Carey. And if you have heard of my comedy, if you've heard of this podcast, and you want me to come perform in your city, let me know, and we'll find a way to do it. I love to travel, and I want to do more. I want to see more, meet new people, and I want to do more shows. So that would help me a great deal. So thank you very much, guys. And let's get to my chat with Sam Evans.
I do this all the time at work, where you just click through internet lists of like the top most beautiful places around the world. I feel like I've looked at that street before.
Yeah, you might have, or have you ever? I don't know if you've ever worked in an office, but some offices, they have like the Captivate elevator screen that like will just give you like random tidbits, and then it'll show you like people's vacation photos to just like really kill your soul on the way up.
Like, look at them having fun.
Yeah, it's like, look how beautiful this is. You can't afford to go there.
know, man.
Yeah.
You guys do quite a bit of traveling. It seems like.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. It's we do. I've been this year alone. I've been in London, Dublin, Liverpool, and I think that's and Montreal, and Ottawa, and then I'm going to like 8 cities in Southeast Asia in October.
That's awesome.
I try not to talk about it too much because like I don't want to like come off as like the like super privileged asshole.
Sure. Yeah. But I don't think you don't have a scent of that on you ever. You know what I mean? So I get it. Also, the fact that you're like worried about that shows that you would never be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you generally like the people that worry about stuff don't become the thing they're worried about.
Yes, exactly.
Because there's a self-awareness that people that become the thing don't have.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. But then conversely, knowing that, you're like, well, so I'll always be worried about it as a safeguard.
Yeah.
know?
Well, something I thought about, and it's just an odd thing to reference, but there was an episode of Friends, I think from like season 8, where like Rachel was like afraid of becoming her mom, and then she and Joey are on his boat, and it turns out that she became her dad, kind of like some of his personality characteristics. So, so like I'm very defined by like not being like my dad, but I'm also probably a lot of my mom's maybe more negative qualities, although she has a lot of great qualities. So I don't know if that's going to sneak up on me later.
I'm sure it will.
Do you worry about this stuff?
Constantly, all the time.
You
for
always,
me, it's my mother. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, why is that? Well, first, I'm curious because, actually, go ahead. I'm sorry. I totally interrupted.
Just great lady. She's so smart, and I feel like I get a lot of natural humor from her. But I feel like, and I also feel guilt about it. I think she gave up a lot to be a mom.
Yeah.
And then I think at some point maybe she sounds so shitty, but I think she kind of resigned herself to that and just gave up in a number of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And could you feel that when you were younger?
A little bit. She was going back to school to get her teaching degree, and she ended up not finishing it, even though she loved it. And I've always felt very guilty because the reason was because I was like still pretty young, and so was my next oldest brother. And I think that she had a lot on her plate, and she was just like, I can't really do this right now.
That's something that weighs on me constantly, like the idea of like the more normal trappings of what life is like. You know, you get married and you have kids, and then I have this like unending fear that everything I like and hold dear, which is not much compared to other people, but that's all going to slip away, and I'll become a shell of my former self and be sad all the time. Yeah, I live in a state of being afraid of being sad all the time. Yeah, which is an odd position for an entertainment centered person to be in. Yeah. So and at what age did you become cognizant of this? And does that lead into your depressive states now?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Anytime I feel like I'm being, and this is so, I feel guilty even saying it because I don't think of my mom as one-dimensionally as this, but anytime that I feel like I'm kind of being lazy or resigning myself to something, I'm like, oh, I'm destined to become my mom, I guess, you know? And I think I kind of realized it not until like into adulthood, like after college and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, so you were an adult and you started thinking this. Yeah. How does that play into like, I'm curious that if you had this sort of awareness of your mom's own life, did you feel that way about your relationship with your dad?
No, not as much.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I kind of hold my dad up as like an ideal. He's a great guy, and it's probably both unfair to my mom and to him because he surely has a lot of flaws. My dad's not perfect, but I just admire him in a lot of ways, and he always seems on top of his shit. Yeah. And I have never once felt that way, and so I'm like, one day I'll get there. You know.
What did he do for a living?
He's a surgeon.
He was a surgeon.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So that's again one of those careers that people universally think people who have their shit together, they're like doctors or lawyers. That's like in that field of like things of like people who are on top of it do that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would categorize him as being like on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if it. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me to have to hear you say you have a good relationship with your dad, because I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that fueled me in a lot of ways, definitely in the way I've lived my life and where I've decided to live and jobs I've taken, and just a very strident and determined urge to defy him in every possible way.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I'm gonna want to trace this, how we both ended up doing comedy. You're from the Midwest, right?
From the Midwest, suburbs of Toledo area. Whenever I tell comedy people, I just say I'm from Cincinnati, because Cincinnati is where I started comedy.
Right.
And I lived there for 7 years, and it does feel like home to me in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I'm from a really rural part of Maryland, but I lived outside of Baltimore for 6 years, so it's easier to say live near Baltimore, because how else am I going to explain where Calvert County is?
Yeah. I could tell you I grew up in Perrysburg next to a golf course, but nobody knows where that is.
Yeah, no one knows. Well, so comparing the cities in Ohio, because I don't have much of a feel for Ohio outside of conversations with John Balancini I've had.
Oh, sure.
Ohio just kind of feels like this, like, you know how other cities and states have like very distinctive things that bring to your mind? Ohio doesn't have anything like that for me. Like, how big of a city is Toledo compared to how big of a city Cincinnati is?
I think if you're going down the rung, probably the two biggest cities are either Columbus or Cleveland up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati is third, not a distant third. And then you get down to like Toledo, Dayton, and Akron, kind of. So they're like they're in the smaller half of city. It is a city. There's like a handful of skyscrapers, not many, and a suspension bridge. It's a city, but it's not huge. And then I grew up in the suburbs of that, so a lot of subdevelopments, nice place, pretty affluent white community I grew up in.
Like you're kind of a classic American suburb.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Cincinnati, I mostly know. Well, Columbus, because I follow soccer in the United States. I know the Columbus Crew, who hopefully don't move to Austin.
Are they thinking about it?
There's rumblings. There's an Austin FC logo, and there's this whole campaign to save the Crew because no one wants them to move to Austin.
Wow. And I do know FC.
I'm sorry, yeah, FC Cincinnati.
Yeah, you would probably know better than I would, being a fan. But like, I know they have a club there now, and somebody told me they're on track to join MLS at some point.
They're going to join MLS next year. Yeah. So, and I don't think they've been in existence for too long, but they, along with Atlanta United, there are these two different cities that just, for some reason, these team attracted a whole bunch of really passionate soccer fans. Like FC Cincinnati were in like the second or third division, and like we're just selling out and having these huge
people went crazy
sold out shows with, and like crazy with like the smoke, like the traditional soccer atmosphere with the drums and the smoke, and they were like playing friendlies with like low level Premier League teams. It was pretty wild.
Yeah. And now apparently part of the deal is that they have to have their own stadium. Yeah. And people are starting to talk about where it will be built, but the downtown area outside of Cincinnati, it's this neighborhood called Over the Rhine, which in the past decade has gone through this massive sort of revival. It had been abandoned after Cincinnati had race riots in 2001. We had race riots before it was cool. Just kidding. That's so shitty.
You should do that tonight.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm going to. But yeah, so that area was like abandoned. And then through when I lived there and even up until now, it's been like people are starting to like hang out again. The flip side of that is that there has been like a gross degree of gentrification, you know?
Yeah.
I guess. That always happens.
Well, yeah, like there's like, oh, there's a lot of places to get brunch on this street now.
Yeah.
I could definitely, there's all the negative sides, and then there's the sides of me that like I like some of that stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So again, the constant war I'm at with myself. It's like, oh, things are like, oh, it's fucking up somebody's day.
Yes. Yes.
Life, culture, whatever. Okay. So you grew up in the suburbs of Ohio. Did you two parents? Do you have siblings?
I have 2 older brothers.
2 older brothers, and you're the youngest.
Youngest.
So are you getting like just smashed on all the time and beat up?
Not terribly. No, they were like jerks to me. But if I can't sit here and tell you that I didn't earn every bit of it. And we were never hugely physical fighters. It was more just like giving each other shit, picking on each other, making fun of each other. But also, I'm the youngest by 4 years, and then 6 years from the oldest. So I'm kind of the runt, and never like all of high school. I had my parents to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So you're all effectively an only child for a little bit of time.
Effectively an only child. And if you really want to know why I think I'm very close with my father, I do know, like, they're close now, but, like, he had kind of a really big issue with my oldest brother. I think it was, like, you know how you have that first child thing of, like, we got to get everything right on this kid. We can't mess him up. And my father was just a big hard ass and kind of a workaholic.
Yeah.
And was not a bad dad, but just too strict and not fun enough. And so my brother never got to see my dad relax. And then he was like moving towards retirement and working less as I was in high school. And I got to see my dad be fun, which I didn't realize until years later my brother never really got to see when he was around.
Yeah.
So it was like a whole big thing.
Yeah, he's like an entirely different guy.
Yes, very much so.
That's really interesting to me to think about that, because like there's this idea of like, and I think now maybe also with the internet that you kind of can get locked into the person you were as who you always were, but that's not really the case at all. Like the person I was 10 years ago is very different from the person I am now.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yes, I feel that way. In fact, I even kind of comforted myself a little bit because somebody once I read somewhere that you're like pretty much who you're going to be when you're 25. And I remember being like 27 and just being like, fuck, that sucks because I don't want to be. But now I'm like, well, that's definitely not true, because when I think about who I was at 25, I'm like a far cry from that. And in a lot of ways, I'm like so thankful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I trace it most readily outside of like, oh, what movies am I into? Or like what TV shows am I into? The way I trace it most is I'm still young to a lot of people. I'm 32, but I'm now coming back around to my I don't give a fuck what a lot of people think mode. Like not quite to the Harold and Maude stage, but like I'm watching the TV shows I liked as a kid, and I'm watching the TV shows that I like now, and they're not the ones everyone tweets about and gets a lot of likes on social media. But I'm like, this is for me, and I enjoyed that. And especially like I feel like you could probably trace it with your stand-up also, like the jokes you were writing when you were. How long have you been doing comedy?
8 years, almost 9. Wait, yeah, almost 9.
Almost 9 years. So you think about the jokes that you were writing when you were like 3 years in, like not brand new, but like competent.
Yeah.
Like 3 years in compared to like the kind of jokes that you do now, or just even how you are on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels better. Also, I feel that way when I revisit jokes, and maybe I make them a little bit better, or I can finally pull off something that I tried before.
Yeah.
Or realize why I couldn't, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think about that, like and it's probably an overtired example to make, but all the young kids like that love Bill Burr and love Patrice O'Neill, but don't get like the nuances of what either of those guys do, and just hear the naughty bits. Yeah. And just go for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
After you've been like through the washing machine of life a little bit, and you kind of have that sort of callus around you, that you can kind of pull some of that stuff off. Whereas I think when you're young, you're literally just saying it because you know that word gets a certain reaction.
Yes. Yeah. And you want to be provocative and have people react to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You went to high school in Ohio as well?
High school in Ohio. I never lived outside of Ohio until I moved here, and I moved to New York when I was 27?
27?
26 or 27.
26 or 27. What year was that?
January of 2013. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple years out after me, I moved here in June of 2010. So, but still kind of similar era, I think, in the city and in the comedy scene as well. So, tracing this, who were you? What kind of kid were you in high school?
Funny. I was a theater kid, definitely.
Yeah.
My high school had a good theater program, and that was always really fun. I played in the orchestra because both my older brothers did, and I loved the orchestra.
What did you play?
I played the double bass.
Nice.
I switched in junior high from cello to the double bass, and that was my favorite. It was always the first period every year that I was in high school.
Yeah.
And our orchestra conductor was this guy named Mr. Smith, who had this really, really great deadpan sense of humor. And who would just let me and my friend John do bits all the time. It was really nice. I liked that a lot. Yeah. So,
were you like playing in the orchestra during the musical? Did your school do musicals?
They did do musicals, but usually I was in like the chorus, or I think like once or twice I had like a minor speaking role in like musicals and stuff like that. Yeah.
What were some of the shows you did?
I did Les Miserables.
Classic.
Which is very fun. Yeah. I did Oklahoma.
Another classic.
Yeah. And then I did the Wiz. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You did the Wiz.
The Wiz.
Was this an all-white production of The Wiz?
It was an all-white production. I mean, yeah. It was probably an all-white production of The Wiz.
I'm curious about that because is there no stage version of The Wizard of Oz? I swear I saw when I was in high school I saw a stage production of The Wizard of Oz that was in some sort of musical format. But the only thing I remember about it is that Toto was a toy dog, and they would just throw him from off stage.
Really?
Whenever Dorothy would call for Toto.
That's super
and
funny.
That kind of became a reoccurring joke. They performed it at this like 3-day high school theater festival, and that became like a running joke.
That's really funny.
Throughout every show that got introduced, Toto would just.
Oh man, we had
So I'm curious why they would do The Wiz over like Wizard of Oz.
I think it's just tone deafness.
This is like what the like late 90s,
early thousands. I graduated in 2005, and I think The Wiz was my freshman year, so it would have been 2002 about. Yeah, and it was just it's an all-white community, and it's far enough, like way back enough that like, and it's Ohio, so everybody's just like, yeah, this will be fine.
Yeah,
and truthfully, I will tell you, like, it took me years to realize, like if you had asked me that 7 years ago and you'd been like The Wiz, I would have been like, yeah, why is that weird? I would not have known.
Yeah. Well, I probably wouldn't even have my thought would have been like, I seem to remember there being a lot of black people in The Wiz when I saw it last.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I would have thought too much about it, but gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't think my high school ever did anything quite like that. But when I was in college, a couple years after I graduated, they did Rent, and the director tried to change the ending. But then people saw it and like freaked out, and then Musical Theater International wrote about it and they're like, hey, you got to do it how it's written or else you can't do it.
Really?
Yeah. That's so
Rent in high school?
No, this was college.
Okay.
College for Rent. But they also did, this is the same theater department that did Hair, and like everybody got naked on stage, and then everyone went to the cast party and got naked. Those were like the legends that I heard when I was like a freshman or a sophomore.
And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's essentially what it was. Okay, so when you started doing theater, did you have a moment of like, oh, this is my thing? Were you like an aimless child looking for an identity, or did you just sort of like stumble into it and like, oh, this is fun, I'll keep doing this?
I knew that I liked it. My family was pretty musical. My mom like sang in the choir at church, and so we would always, and my dad made us all take like piano lessons from a young age. So it was like I grew up in like a fairly musical household, I would say. So to me, doing like musical theater and orchestra and all that kind of stuff was just like, oh yeah, of course I'll do this because this is what you do, you know? So yeah, I didn't feel like I fell into it. But I did, yeah, I drew like a strong sense of identity from that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like comedy at that point, or were you aware of stand-up comedy as an art form?
I was aware of stand-up comedy. I became really aware of it around junior high. The Comedy Central Presents were like the biggest thing.
Yeah, those were big for me too. Do you remember the ones you saw early on?
Absolutely. I am not ashamed to tell you, I was Dane Cook was huge for me.
I remember that one. The one where he wore the tank top and like
and
had the drums,
had the tearaway pants
at the
end. Jim Gaffigan's, Mitch Hedberg's, Tony Woods, Maria Bamford, Lewis Black. I remember watching Lewis Black's first Comedy Central Presents, and then when I saw that he had a second one coming out, I was floored. I was so excited.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's awesome. I remember being in high school before I really became aware of like being into like following stand-up comedy. The ones I remember early on, I remember seeing Jim David. I don't know if you've met him. He's an older comic. He's at I believe he plays this Cellar a lot. He had this joke where he talks about his dad asking like what he and his partner like, what do you do? And he said, Dad, you know all that stuff you want Mom to do but she won't? We do that. And I just thought that was the funniest joke, and that was probably he's definitely the first gay comedian I ever heard.
Yeah.
And I remember early on, what were some of the other ones? I believe it or not, I do remember Carlos Mencia's Comedy Central Presents.
Vividly remember Carlos.
Early on, because he ended on a
not laugh.
On a not laugh.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember being truly impressed by that too.
Me too. Yeah. I remember like, whoa, because that was the first time I'd ever seen that. Because all the other ones, like you close big.
Yeah. And now I know that when that came out, I know that there were peers of his that were like, fuck you. You know? I didn't. Maybe you've heard more, because I think your career is doing a little bit better than mine is. So I'm curious if you've heard any stories like that, because I didn't start to hear the like, he's a joke thief stuff until I was in college. Oh, the stealing, I don't. Yeah, it had to be later because I remember for a couple of years I was blown away by that. And I don't remember even any whispers of it until like a while later. In fact, I think he had a show on Comedy Central.
Yeah.
Mind of Mencia, before it started like being like, no, this guy's a thief.
That's when I first heard about it. Someone in my school paper wrote, well, it was like one of those like, this shows just a lot of broad stereotypes, and he has this reputation for stealing jokes, and I just took that like, oh, okay, that's what that guy is. And then I didn't learn more about it until he was on Marin, I think in 2009. So I was already out of college by then.
Yeah.
Did you ever listen to those? Those are fascinating.
Oh, the old Marins?
The when he was on Marin twice,
yes,
and they discussed it, that got me really into podcasting. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, that was I remember being that was right when I started stand up, and I remember this guy Tabari McCoy was a comedian. He still is, and he was like, you guys got to listen to that Mark Maron guy. He's great. He's got a lot of anger. Does a lot of interviews, and I was like, well, I'll listen to it all the time. And then right away he had Mencia on, and it was that was nuts. Yeah,
that was like one of the first ones I heard, because I think the only other podcast I had listened to in 2009 was Smodcast. So I just knew podcasts as like Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier just kind of having a rambling chat. And it was the first time, like especially the second one, where like when Maron is like really getting in the like, I heard this specific thing about you. Did you do it? Mm-hmm. And Mencia doesn't have too much to back himself up.
Yeah.
I imagine he's again, because you're not defined by who you are, I imagine he's a very different person now. I know, do you know Miguel Demal, right?
Yeah. Well, he left fairly quickly after I moved here. But
Yeah.
I know him. Yeah.
So I don't know if he still does, but I know he did a bunch of shows with Mencia, and a friend of mine from Baltimore did a bunch of shows with him, and apparently the experience is very different, very positive. So
I would hope so, right?
yeah,
Because you gotta. It seemed like he was very guilty, and not just guilty, but also an asshole. So I would hope that you would.
Well, that was the big thing that listening to that second episode, because they the way he those interviews really made me think, oh, okay, yes, everyone changes. A lot of people change their name to have a more like catchy sounding stage name. That's not anything to hang someone up to dry on, and like the jokes that were always talked about were like the same kind of like topical stuff that maybe like 5 or 6 people might come up with a similar idea outside of a couple of more specific things. But the big things I heard was that, yeah, he was just a real bully. He was mean to people, and he bumped people for like hours, 45 minutes at a time.
He wasn't dropping in to do 30 even. Like, that's a dick move, to drop in and do 30. He's dropping in and doing 3 hours.
Yeah. Like even if you are very successful, that seems like you would remember where you came from and how rude that can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the big thing that I took from that. And I sometimes I'm still waiting for him to. I feel like eventually he'll make he'll do another special, and I'm waiting for him to come back and do something as like, yeah, Bill Cosby, what about it now? Yeah, everyone was on Bill's side, 2009. Where are we now? I might be the only one who has that thought, but
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So when you were watching these specials, were you like, I'm going to do that, or did that take a while to get to?
No, I just liked him a lot.
Yeah.
I do. It was cool. I remember we had to do these things sophomore year of high school called identity books.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of, I think it was like to have an exercise in like improving your self-esteem, which might be, excuse me, this is gross.
Oh, no problem. It's all good.
Improving your self-esteem, like as a high school student, like a sophomore. But you had to go through and just talk about your family and what do you like to do and your hobby and who do you look up to. And I did write down stand-up comedian then. Not like I want to be them, but I just think that they're so cool.
Yeah.
And like, isn't that so cool that you're just making people laugh by talking?
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't occur to me until college. And it was really, we were just going to Go Bananas, which is my home club, and it's
that's one of the best clubs in the country from everything I've read.
It's very good, and we started hanging out there a little bit, or just going like every other month or something, and I liked it so much, and I was thinking about doing it, and finally had a good group of friends, and they were like, "Well, you should try this because you clearly like this, and you think about it all the time."
Yeah. And what were you going to school for?
English literature.
English literature.
Yeah.
So these are like your other English friends?
No, it's just kind of I rowed my first 2 years at Cincinnati. And it was not a varsity sport, it was a club sport. So it wasn't
rowed like horses?
Crew.
Oh.
Rowing.
Oh, rowing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was so none of us were actual rowers. We were just guys who had free time, and we were like, I'm kind of lonely and I don't have friends. And
I'll do an activity where I have to be in a boat with people, and I'll make friends that way.
Yeah, and then that was like the basis of my friend group, and then that kind of like evolved with like different people over the years. But that was how I met all my friends in college.
Yeah, and so you guys so you have a group, and who are you seeing at Go Bananas? Anybody stick out?
The first comedian I ever saw, not famous, but he's still great, is a guy named Troy Baxley. He's so funny. And that blew me away the first time I ever saw a live comedy show. We sat up front. He made fun of my friend Alec. And it was just, looking back, it was just basic crowd work. But I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then, who else? Chris Porter. Do you know Chris Porter?
I know Chris Porter.
Yeah.
Not personally, but I know his comedy.
Yeah. He was like an early favorite of mine. And I took a girlfriend for her birthday to go see Chris Porter. And I remember being blown away because it seemed like he was drunk and he was still funny.
Yeah. Yeah, he sort of has that, like this is when before Netflix really started like saying we're going to make all the stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I think his special Ugly and Angry was one of the early ones that I remember watching on Netflix. I think he and Jasper Red, another comic I really, really like, record it. I think they recorded in the same theater because it's a very similar like setup.
Yeah.
But I liked his stuff. That especially as like 3 people went to Iraq on vacation. I love his sort of, I can't believe that this happened.
Yeah.
But it did. So I like that sort of like cadence I really enjoy.
Yeah. And he was the first, an early person that I got to host for. He was the first person that I like loved his comedy. And then I got to host for him and he was like very nice. And he's like a super sweet guy. He's so great. And so I was like and it always gave me an appreciation for like, oh, you don't ever have to be a dick doing stand-up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you really don't.
Yeah, you can just be nice.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, that's something like I can't remember who Bert Kreischer was talking to on his podcast, but just like I think the nice element is a very underrated factor in the success in comedy flowchart. Like, cause that's like one of my like 3 things I always think about is like, I'll be nice to people. I'll try to be as funny as possible. And I'll just say thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't like all this, like I hear, like, I don't run in the circles where you hear these kind of like nightmare stories from comedians who are like, oh my God, was that a show or was that like a crime?
Yeah.
That not bad shows, but you hear about like the environment of certain rooms, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
I'm very detached.
Nor do I want to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because like I've been on shows that you've run, and you've been on shows I've run. You know, I think we generally try to go for like positive atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're trying to make people laugh. It's a happy thing.
Yeah.
So you start like doing bringers or something at Go Bananas?
Yeah.
Or do they have an open mic?
It's an open mic, but it is a bringer. They ask you to bring 5 people to get
that's
on.
Nice.
But that rule is pretty loose. What you realize is that if you just start showing up, they'll eventually just whenever they have an open slot, they'll throw you up. And I remember I had done like a handful of bringers and I was just going to hang out. And I remember the first time they asked me to, the open mic, the way they do it is just piggyback. So a guy opens and then you just introduce the next guy the whole show, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the night that they asked me to open, I had been doing it for like 4 months and I was like, this is the greatest night of my life. And, and I ate shit for half of 5 minutes, which is fine.
Yeah.
So it was, it's the best. I think it's a really good place to start. It's just a good club, not only because they're bringing in a good pedigree of comics, but they take an active interest in local talent and bringing people up. And half of the comics end up working there. I did the door for a while, and then the year before I left, I was waiting tables there. And the couple that owns the comedy club, they own the whole complex. So during the summer, you just go and like mow lawns and mulch and plant flowers. You're just the landscaping crew for this mini mall area. And
that sounds kind of nice though. There's like a real like team effort.
Yes. And it's a very insular community. You're just in it.
Mm-hmm. So like the community aspect, because I'm curious what makes like the best comedy clubs like Go Bananas or Acme in Minneapolis or Caroline's here in New York. Like, what is it outside of just funny people on the stage and like the owners like really being invested? What makes a great club like that great?
I have always believed this, and it's not a concrete rule, but I do think that I love a room, like I love the physical setup of it, where it's low ceilings.
Yeah.
You walk in and it feels like you're in a basement. You're not, but it's low ceilings. They fucking pack the tables right up to the stage.
Yeah.
And then the stage jets out from the wall just a little bit. So you do have like a 180 of the audience around you. It's not a very big stage, but you can, and it's a low but wide sweeping room.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about packing people into a small area for comedy.
Yeah.
Makes it that much more intense in terms of like waves of laughter, things like that.
Yeah. Just like because everyone is so close, and there's this like social aspect of like one person laughs, it gives everyone else permission to laugh.
Yes.
Where you kind of get those like Comedy Works in Denver. That was another one I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
And if I didn't mention your club, it's just because I'm not thinking about it right now. But like, yeah, there's something to that, pack them all in kind of mentality, and like just the closeness of it. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Like, did you ever, you did the Laughing Devil, right? When it was around?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm thinking like that, narrow room, got audience here, got a few audience here, and then you got more audience on the side. It used to be, because I worked the door there, they used to have the stage set up at the far end by the bathroom, so you could really only play to the first 3 tables.
Yeah. I think I remember when the stage was back there. I could be wrong about that. I remember it going through shifts in setup now. And now it's, well, apparently the standing room shut down.
The standing room is no more also. Yeah. I walked by it and was like, huh.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Me neither.
Yeah. And that was kind of an even more exaggerated version of there was almost no one in front of you. There's like half a table at the standing room, and then it's just to the sides.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then and I like the stand, or I don't know what their new space is going to be like, but the stand was kind of similar.
Stand.
I did a couple of the roast battles where they were just, again, those are so popular, and it was just like I told one good joke, and I was like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. They're very pat, and the same with the cellar, Comedy Cellar. It's Stand Up in New York is also similar. It's slightly bigger, and you're definitely higher up on the stage. But it is a similar layout in terms of it's a good.
Yeah, it's got that good like rectangle.
Yeah,
kind of like a narrow rectangle. I also like at Stand Up in New York, the balcony little area.
Yes,
I like that. That's just a nice stylistic flourish I enjoy.
Yeah. So
you started Go Bananas. When did you graduate again?
2010.
2010. So there's like a 3 years between graduation and getting to New York. And you got the English degree?
I got the English degree.
And at what point does comedy become the thing?
It was the thing, kind of the last year of school. I went through. I had done it like twice. Yeah. As like a oh, this will be cool. And then I went through a breakup, and I was like, oh, I have to do. I was like drinking a lot, not a ton, but just like, oh, I guess I have to start doing something now because I can't just keep drinking. And so I started doing stand up a lot then, and then by the time I was like graduating. And I just remember really, I kind of always assumed I would go to grad school or something like that and be like a TA and then maybe a I don't know. But at that point I was like, well, I don't want to put money into this because I clearly don't have that big of an interest in it. Right. But I do like this a lot, and I'm free now. I could just try and see how it goes. Yeah. And now it is too late. Yeah.
It's too. You're too deep in.
I'm too deep.
Yeah, I feel that way sometimes, but I like it, so I don't bemoan my position too much.
Yes.
So you moved to New York 2013. Where were you living when you first moved here? Did you know anybody, or were you just?
I knew people, but not a ton. And the comics that I knew here, I remember feeling that they were too far above me, so I didn't try to hang out with them. Or I did, but not like all the time.
Yeah. Who are those guys?
Andrew Short and Reed Failer. Do you remember them?
Yeah, I remember them. I haven't seen either of them in a while. How are they doing?
They're doing really well. I believe Reed is married, and I think Andrew's probably about to be or is. And they're doing well, and they still do like a lot of like short film projects together and stuff. They were always like creative partners. Anyway,
so they're sort of like branching off into from stand up into film stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And
that sort of makes sense. They even like when Reed was doing like the Wildcats, there was this like theatrical side to them.
Love that, yeah, and they're so good at it.
Yeah.
But they were, yeah. I remember holding them in kind of like reverence, and I was like, oh, I don't want to. Make a fool out of myself.
I know what you mean. When I had met the one show I would do every week at in Baltimore, which was at the time it was at a Damon's Bar and Grill. It was called Drink Till We're Funny, and Rory Scovel and Scott Moran came through and headlined that show, and then a show in Annapolis. So I had met them, and I was like, "Oh, tell me about New York. What do I need to do to move there? I really want to move there." So when I got here, I was trying to play it cool, but I was also trying to like, oh, I've got to be more social because I'm super shy, but I don't know how to be social and not appear desperate. Like all of those, like all those.
What a miserable time that is. You know what I mean? I mean, it's good for you. And when you look back on it now, I'm always like, oh, it's fine. But like, I remember just being so like, who am I friends with? Who am I? I'm alone. I don't know what's happening. I remember conversely, that's the most productive I've ever been, because I didn't. It was very sad thinking about it this way, but because I didn't have friends, I really did just go to open mics and then just work on jokes, and that was about all I did for the better part of a year, and that was the most improved I ever got as a comic was when I didn't have friends, but I was also very sad and alone.
Yeah. No, I sort of was too. Well, and then I didn't have like a somewhat stable source of income, I think, for at least a year. I was like just scraping by and borrowing money from my parents, and I sold my car and like just destitute. Yeah. Like I burned through all my savings super quickly, and I mean, things are much better now, but
that happens so quickly.
Yeah, too. It's just amazing how fast, how expensive things are in the city, just because they're in this city. Like this sandwich on this side of the river is $7, and this sandwich on that side of the river is $4.
Yeah.
But character building stuff. I think it's important to do that. Maybe I feel like the myth of the like you got to suffer. I feel like that you got to suffer for your art gets perpetuated by some people that want to take advantage of newer comics. But I do think there is a healthy personal growth to be had from struggling.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not suffering; it's struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the part of the, I guess, makes you know that you want it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you keep putting up with it, you must really want it.
Yeah.
So so you get to New York, you're putting in the work, you're growing as a comic. I'm curious because you've done Just for Laughs, right?
Yes.
I want to kind of trace how we get to there, if only because that aspect of the comedy business is a pure mystery to me.
Oh, sure.
I don't know. I've been to Montreal. It's a lovely city.
It's a great town.
And the festival sounds incredible. And I love when people I know get it, but it's like trying to explain fire to a moth. I'm curious what your experience there was, and what your experience has been since. Like how does that integrate into your growth as a comic? That festival.
It was not good for me. I had that was like I didn't expect to get. I got an audition for it after I had been here for a year, a little over a year, like a year and 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an audition for it, and I got a call back, and I got it. And I was very excited, and I didn't expect to get it.
Uh-huh.
So I...
and is that something you get asked to audition for, or...
You get recommended
Okay.
to audition. I got recommended by Rebecca Trent.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
One of the pure angels of comedy I've ever met.
Pure angels of comedy, yeah. Comedy's Mother Mary.
Yes.
And so I bombed, which since I have learned, and I've dealt with this, but at the time, oh my God, what a blow. Because I don't think I went into it with conscious expectations, but once I bombed, and I bombed at like the big show, that they give you 2 showcases, and one is in like a bigger 500-seat theater, and the other's in like a small, slightly smaller than the old UCB Chelsea room.
Yep.
And the first one I just bombed so bad, really bad. And looking back now, it's very funny, but at the time, and I didn't have any conscious expectations, but then I think I had kind of quietly in the back of my mind let myself get too excited about it.
Right.
And so I was just so crestfallen and embarrassed. I remember I stood around the rest of the weekend waiting for a manager or an agent to talk to me, and nobody did, except I must have gotten 50 "you were funny too"s that weekend, which, if you know from comedy, it's just the worst compliment.
Right.
Oh, you were funny too. Thank you.
Right. That's the pull. That's like the way of saying that. Yeah. I know that feeling.
And you're here.
Yeah. You exist.
Yeah. And so I didn't really get anything out of it, which is fine. But it was like a year to, I would say, 2-year process of just getting over that. And for a long time after, I would say I was like going through the motions of comedy.
Yeah.
I was like doing it a lot and writing a lot, but just being fucking miserable.
Right.
And
you weren't like present.
Yes. Yeah. And it's since come back around and everything's fine. But yeah, it was hard. But I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'm glad to hear that that you came out the other side of that, because that sounds like that's like one of those things that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, like Montreal is built up as one of those things of like you go there and then your career is set if you have a good set there. So did you think like that when you were going?
I think, in the back of my mind, I did think that. Like, not consciously. I was like, no, I'll just go and have fun. But somewhere in my mind. Because otherwise, I wouldn't have been so upset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
somewhere in my mind, I must have been like, this is it. I'll just, it's all happening, you know?
Yeah.
And, if I could go back now, I always say this, if I could go back now and do the same set and bomb in the same way, I would just go and have so much more fun.
Right.
Because there were at least 3 different nights where some like College Humor and then Comedy Center, they all threw parties each night. So it was like an open bar, and like somebody had like a breakfast buffet at midnight. And I remember
that sounds great.
Having maybe 3 drinks and just going outside to nervously smoke cigarettes. And if I could go back now, I would drink all the drinks.
Yeah.
I would talk to any comic I thought I wanted. I would pull Ron White by the sleeve and be like, "You were the only part of Blue Collar I like," you know? I would just do all of that. I would just have fucking fun, because that's what you're supposed to do up there. Some people get careers made up there, and that's great, but I can draw up a way longer list of people who have not done well at Montreal and have gone on to do great things in comedy.
Yeah.
You know? So I would have just let it go and been like, whatever, I'm going to go to a fucking French Canadian strip club now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you do ever go back, I can recommend a bunch of great food. There's a absolutely phenomenal poutine diner called La Banque C. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
It is open 24/7, and they have over 60 different kinds of poutine.
Over 60 different kinds?
Yes. Every time I go there, I get pepperoni and bacon poutine, and I get a large. I don't get the regular, and I just house that fucking large. It is the only thing I eat that whole day, but it is so good. People wait outside in the frigid below zero Canadian winter.
That's how you know.
That's how good it is. And another place I found out listening to Mark Maron was this deli called Schwartz's. Mm-hmm. They do smoked meat. Like, it's a very specific Montreal style smoked meat, and it is so delicious. Like, if you like pastrami here,
yes,
lovely.
Yeah.
And also, there's an entire neighborhood of Montreal that has a lot of like metal and death metal concert venues. And I'm just glad that exists.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then you go down to Old Montreal, which is gorgeous. It's just so nice to walk down there.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I love about La Banca C, there's a cola called Beck that's like sweetened with maple syrup, but they like make cola or lemon lime, and they use maple syrup, and it is quite wonderful. It is worth the $4 Canadian dollars. Yeah, so I enjoy this. Did you have a moment when you're coming back around to now where you sort of let go of all that stuff that you were carrying on to from your experience at Just for Laughs?
I think it was just a lot of like little moments, like just letting yourself have fun again, and like small. The biggest things that I'm proud of in comedy are small moments that nobody really seems to see. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And for right now, it kind of has to be enough, and it is. But yeah, it's never like any like giant victory. It's just like the moment where you got the one joke to work, and you're like, oh, I wasn't crazy for thinking that was funny.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Just I love those little moments like that, or like just creating something and you're like, hey, that's really cool. I like the way that turned out. Like I do fewer sets because my job is somewhat comedy adjacent, but I'm trying to put a lot of effort, and I'm also putting a lot of effort into growing this podcast. So I do fewer sets than I definitely did when I was grinding like 3 open mics a night. But like the one time I've done Tyrannosaurus, which you're going to do tonight, just I got a couple new ideas and I put them out there and they feel good coming out of my mouth. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to hang my hat on this new thing.
Yeah.
And just like this idea of like just kind of not waiting for permission to do stuff, but just figuring out how to do it and then doing it.
Yeah.
The stuff you want to do.
Yes.
Like, I've been doing stand-up for 10 years. I got a solid 30-minute album in me, I think, and I'm just I want to figure out
how to
get the equipment. Where could I do it? What can I plug into this little recorder to like audiences and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that helps stave off the like brutal open mic depression that I think can set in if you get trapped in that world.
Yeah. Give yourself your own projects and things to work on. You know what I mean? Because if you don't have that, then you're just, you're at the mercy of the open mic universe.
Yeah.
Which is just, or even just like the fucking comedy club, it's all brutal. Like, dude, it took me way too long to realize that it bodes well to have a sense of your own agency, right?
Yeah.
Like you're in charge of Will. I'm in charge of Sam, right?
Yeah.
We're captains of our ship. Take it where you want to take it. Took me way. I did realize while we were talking, I did have one specific, like, huge victory moment after that. It was probably, so Just for Laughs, I flew there on my birthday, July 23rd, and then it wasn't until like February or March, the following February or March, I was up in Vermont, and this was before I was dating my girlfriend, Carmen Lagala.
You guys are dating?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were, but I didn't know for certain. That's nice. I like that.
Oh, yeah. She's the best. Before that, we were, she was just like, oh, we should go and do a bunch of shows. So it was me, her, Justy Dodge, and Raj Sivaraman. Mm-hmm. And one of the shows was at this tiny little, and it was a fundraiser for like their high school's after party. Like all these parents wanted to raise money for their kids' high school after prom. Mm-hmm. and the show started out being so terrible, and I was supposed to close it out, and then like Carmen did okay, Raj did like a little better, and then Justy Dodge kind of broke them, and then I like went up, and I had never ever done it before, and I really don't do it now either, but I felt it was the first time that I had ever done just a whole set of crowd work, and I was up there for like a half hour, and I think I did one joke, and the rest of the time was just like riffing, and it's like one of the better sets I've ever had, and it was just like a moment where I was like, oh, I am like good at this, like I can just beef and everything's gonna be fine. And that was like a huge, it was great. That was a great time.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
it's important to remember, if any other comedians listen to this, that this is fun.
Yes.
Remember that. Don't let the other stuff take that away from you.
Yeah.
I that's something I've wanted to write on Facebook, but I just don't for some reason.
You absolutely should.
Where I'm just like, don't let everything around comedy take away the love for comedy.
Yeah.
That's the important thing that I think is good to remember.
Yeah. If you're not having fun, you're defeating the purpose, right?
Basically.
Yeah.
Dude, I think we figured it out.
We did it.
What are some things you are working on now? What are some things you want to do in the future?
I just decided I'm this weekend. I am actually headlining Go Bananas Home Club for the first time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's a big step.
It is a big step. I feel very good about it. And I think what I want to do is try to spend the next year getting out of town as much as I can to run a longer set. And then I would like to, this time next year, be recording an album as well. Yeah.
Perfect.
So like
dude.
work on that. And other stuff, Carmen and I like to do musical stuff together.
Yeah.
And we've done it on a couple different occasions. Chris Calogero had a show where it was just Die Hard sequels. And Carmen and I wrote a musical Die Hard sequel. and it's extremely niche, but it did really well. And so ever since then, I think we've both been like, well, can we do something else like that? So that'd be fun.
Mm-hmm. What movie are you going to make into a musical?
Now I don't even know. It'd be fun to do something that should not, like a Die Hard, something that should not be a musical.
Yeah.
Maybe an M. Night Shyamalan, right? The Sixth
like
Sense,
The Village,
The Village, the musical.
Or The Happening.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great, man. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you got some stuff in the pipe. My hope is, and I've been saying it to myself for the past 4 years, my hope is that I can, that I'm ready for Edinburgh next year.
Oh, that would be so fun.
I really want to do that.
Yeah. And I hear that is so many people enjoy. Anders Lee is over there, I think, or was, and had gone the year before. And he loved it, and he said he got a lot out of it. And people seem to go crazy for it.
Yeah, I've been to Edinburgh when the festival isn't going on, and it's a great city. So I really want to experience it during the madness of the Fringe, and I have this, aside from my 30 minutes of just like setup punch, I have this hour of stories that I think comfortably fits in the Edinburgh mold. Yeah. So I'm of like a theme with like an arc and stuff, not like a one-man show, but like a slightly like a funnier one-man show.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put it out there so that I got to do it. So this has been great, man. So I hope that I look forward to listening to that album, and
same.
And if you need someone to hype up the crowd, or if you need someone who plays bass or guitar, you know where to find me.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Well, I had a great time.
Dude, thank you so much. This was great. I appreciate it, man.
Awesome.
The thing that struck me most about that is a moment Sam went through that I think some people might have been broken by that permanently and haunted by the what ifs of that. But I'm glad that Sam has a healthy perspective on that, and I'm glad he's in a good place again. So thank you, Sam, for for sharing with me on the show. And thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to tell a friend. We're on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. You can follow me on Twitter at ComicWillCarey. And you can check out my website, willcareyisfunny.com. That is CAREY isfunny.com. I'm looking to get some new stand-up dates posted. So if you want me to come and perform in your city, hit me up, Twitter, or through my website. You can send me a message, and I'll make it happen. I appreciate you listening to this podcast. I'm one of many, and the fact that you would take time to listen to this, I really appreciate it. So thank you, and I'll see you guys next week between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everybody.